Hello, my name is Chrissy Garrison. I publish as Chris Garrison with 7 Star Press, and I am here today to answer some questions that I was given by Jorie of Jorie Loves a Story. She is also a friend of mine. We've gotten to know each other over the years as author and book blogger, and I'm happy to answer her questions. So, let's start. She says, "We explore poltergeists in the first Road Ghosts novel, 4 Till Late. How did you decide to focus on this angle of entrance into the paranormal aspects of the series versus focusing on a different angle?" Yeah, I suppose I did use poltergeist. I guess I wanted since it was a haunted road trip, I wanted something that would go with them to cause the haunting. And a poltergeist gets attached to people and is caused by that certain person's psyche. I had thought about making the van in Road Ghosts the haunted object, or something hidden in the van to be haunted. I even thought about having a dead body in the van, but I figured they'd figure that out by odor before they would anything else. So I don't know. Poltergeists seem to make the most sense for a mobile ghost that could follow them around. She says, "What do you think would be harder to shake from a haunting? A poltergeist, a ghost who can't move forward, or a demon whose motivations are unknown, and why?" I'm going to have to go with demon, because demons, not that, I'm not sure. I'll say that I have been an amateur ghost hunter in the past, and I haven't encountered demons. I'm not sure I believe in them. But as they're written in fiction, demons are malevolent, fully intelligent, powerful beings. You can't just, rid yourself of them by saying go away like you can a ghost. And some ghosts are more stubborn than that, but demons are supposed to be much more harmful. So it seems like an easy question in that respect. Anyway, road trips are a big part of the allure of the Road Ghost series. Well, thank you. What is your favorite road trip you've taken? Where did you go, and did you seek out things off the beaten path like Gonzo? Also, what was your favorite road trip place to eat, and what did you have? Well, this is a little difficult because it's been a while since I've been on a real epic road trip. But the reason I wrote the Road Ghosts the way I did was as an homage to my real life Uncle Chuck. He and I used to take road trips together, and some of the ones in Road Ghosts were based on those. Minus the paranormal. The 4 Till Late road trip, which that goes to New Orleans, was directly based on a road trip I took with Chuck a long time ago, 1992. Although that was with other people, and we had to sleep in the truck, and it was a different sort of harrowing. I think that's probably the one I remember the most, is if I think about road trips. We also did go to Memphis another time, so I kind of combined those two in one single fictional road trip. Let's see. Yeah, and Gonzo is based on Chuck, and Chuck was always big on finding local things that were off the beaten path. He always seemed to know some secrets about the places we went. And he always sought out the mythical. When we were in New Orleans, he sought out the mythical 50-cent red beans and rice that's the best you've ever had. Nothing else would do, and we were hungry as we wandered around looking for it. I ended up having to insist, and we ended up eating it at a Popeyes, I think it was. Favorite place to eat? Oh, I don't know. There's so many places. I don't think I have a good memory of a specific place that I ate along a road trip. At least nothing that's coming to me right now. Sorry, Jorie. What is your favorite scene in 4 Till Late, and what made it memorable? Um, that's a really tough question. Um, I think the ones that stick out for me more are ones that are not necessarily favorites because they were hard. Like when uh, the, the zombie trucker, well, sort of zombie trucker, had Brett and Liz in the back of the semi and was coming at them. That was intense, very intense to write, very difficult to write. I didn't like inflicting that on my characters, and I didn't. I wouldn't say it's I don't get excited and happy when I read it. So I don't know. Most of the stuff with Liz in it is my favorite stuff. Like I know what I'll say. It was the Halloweening in on Beale in Memphis that was my favorite part. Everybody's in costume. They're being silly. They're letting loose. They're showing a bit of their true character. Um, it was fun. I think that's probably my favorite part. Just the characters letting loose, and then just before other things happen. Let's see. In Sinking Down, you explored the concept of a ghoul. Your definition of a ghoul also talks about differences between a ghoul and the undead zombies, as your stories parlay into the world of zombies every so often. What was important about reflecting this difference, but also to show a different perspective about ghouls and zombies? Um, the main difference between ghouls and zombies in the Road Ghosts is that ghouls still have a bit of a living spirit in them. Not it's most of it's seeped out into the out as into the shadow world as a sort of ghost. Um, it's a ghoul is a body that's only partially inhabited by a spirit. Um, I don't want to give too many spoilers here. Um, the only real zombie I think in all of my books were the times when the demon inhabited a completely dead body, or a body that had died. Um, those aren't really your standard zombies. Those are sort of intelligent hauntings of a corpse. I just had the characters refer to them as a zombie. I mean, in the Tipsy Fairy Tales, I have some fake zombies that were people who are kind of almost like the original concept of a zombie, somebody who's lost their free will. Um, but the ghoul is. I wanted to make a distinction between ghoul and zombie because I wanted to have the concept of a bit of living soul, somebody who could maybe be redeemed, not redeemed, but healed, brought back, or is somewhere with one foot in each world. Um, Somebody you could have some empathy for. A zombie is just a body that's moving. It's not there's nothing of the original person left in them. A ghoul is more empathetic. It's a sympathetic character because there's, despite the kind of failing physical body, you still have somewhere deep in there is the original person. So it's kind of more horrific in a way. Let's see. Uncle Gonzo is a celebration of a real-life person who is important to you. What can you share would have been his reaction to Gonzo? What do you think he might have loved about his character he inspired? I don't know. Since it's based on my Uncle Chuck, Gonzo's based on Uncle Chuck, who passed away before I even started writing this. I don't know what he would think. I think he'd appreciate the homage. He'd probably point out all the things I got wrong, the creative license I took. Nobody likes. I wouldn't say that. I was going to say nobody likes being fictionalized, but I've had friends who are happy with characters that were based on them that I wrote. He'd be amused by some of the in-jokes that I threw in there, I think. I think he would pick at the differences that he saw between my fictional version of him and himself. And a lot of that I think is because when I write about him, I write my picture of what he's like, and he wouldn't necessarily see himself that way, looking out through his own eyes. You know, um, I think that someone's depiction of me wouldn't necessarily wouldn't necessarily match my view of myself either. But I think, Chuck being Chuck, I think he probably would have teased me about the differences or something like that. I think he would have been flattered to be included, and might appreciate some of the jokes that the callbacks to real life things that I put in there. She says, I hadn't realized we share a common thread of interest, the paranormal, nor did I realize you've been out ghost hunting. What are your top 2 experiences while seeking out the paranormal? Did you have a particular experience which affected you more than the others, or is the area of being able to reach out to the unknown and experience something that can't be completely explained that is the most alluring of all? Also, what is your favorite place or setting to experience something that's supernatural? Okay, that's a lot of questions, Jorie. I'll do my best, though. I spent 8 years as a amateur paranormal investigator along with my wife, and we went all around the state of Indiana and not that far away. I actually included a couple of places I've been in, Me and the Devil in particular. I've been ghost hunting at Central State a long time ago, with permission, and I have been to Bobby Mackey's Music World, which is also called Hell's Gate, and I've been to Levelland Castle, which is a real place in near Cincinnati, Ohio. These are why they're in there. I wanted to use those real life locales for a fictional backdrop. And of course, I greatly exaggerated the events in those places, but I did use them as a base. Favorite, I think. Well, Central State's the one we keep coming back to as sort of this holy grail. It was a state-run mental asylum in central Indiana for a lot of years, from the 1800s till the 1980s. The place was shut down abruptly. A lot of people were let out onto the streets when they should have been in other care. There are lots of stories of abuse that happen along its history. It's notoriously haunted, and we saw many things that were experienced many things that were hauntings that couldn't be explained otherwise at Central State. And maybe some of the allure is that it's a place that's hard to get into. It's more or less impossible to get into anymore, and it's being completely rebuilt as a new development now. So the days of hunting there are in the past, and so maybe overly glamorized. But it is one of those places that I wish I could have gone back to visit again. The Bobby Mackey's Music World is another place that I would say is, it had its ups and downs. It's a working bar. There's no music there. There's a lot of disturbance there as far as, it being an active, real life place, not a old abandoned place. So it makes it more difficult to ghost hunt. You have to go when there's not people there. And we had a lot of personal experiences in that place, and I've had a bit of minor evidence crop up there where that was kind of interesting. Where I actually measured unexplained battery drain in that place in a dramatic way with a device I had built. Another favorite place is the Hannah House in Indianapolis. There's a lot of stories about that place from over the years, and we've had some pretty neat evidence come up where several things happened at once that corroborated one piece of evidence with another. Um, anyway, let me move on. Jorie asks, I truly love the historical romance within Spectral Delivery. Would you ever consider expanding on this thread and perhaps writing either a novel or novella which develops the fuller backstory of those two characters? What inspired that part of the plot? I don't remember what inspired it exactly. I really wanted to have it was a Valentine's Day story, and it was going to be a haunted one. So I thought, how about a romantic haunting? People are reaching across from one world to another to show their love, not letting death get in the way. Um, I don't know that I could work it into another story. I'm not a romance writer. That was a one-off for me. I don't know that I could write about those characters as in a historical context, and enjoy it anyway. I'm not. I think the answer is pretty much no. I don't think I'll revisit them. Maybe in a short story, but I don't see. They're only there because I wanted a romantic ghost plot for Enid to see through Brett, and show Brett doing good things for the dead and living that need each other, using his ghostly powers for good. But I'm glad you enjoyed that part. Let's see. What was the hardest part about showing the evolution of growth for Brett while writing Me and the Devil? The part where he had to almost lose everything he held dear, his friends who were his family, or the anguish he had realizing he had to face himself in order to sort out how to move forward. The hardest part was writing Brett and Gonzo at odds. I drew on a real life disagreement, real life quarrel I had with Chuck for that, so I had to revisit bad memories and putting my characters through that hard place, having Brett feel like he'd lost his best friend, having Gonzo feeling hurt because he thinks that Brett is acting out in a way that Gonzo thinks he's lying about, or at least he isn't willing to accept the explanation that's given. Gonzo expects Brett to own up to his actions and not blame it on somebody else. And it was easy to see both sides of that fight, and I didn't like having the fighting because Gonzo always has Brett's back and vice versa. I pretty keenly felt the isolation that Brett was going through as I wrote that. So that was definitely the hardest part. But yeah, well, that was part of the plot of Me and the Devil. Was Brett has to lose almost everything before he can confront himself before he can get it back. Let's see, what is your favorite part about the friendship between Gonzo and Brett, as the two are close in age, yet they give the illusion that one is older than the other? Yeah, so Gonzo is based on my real-life uncle who was only 5 years older than me. That age makes more of a difference at a younger age, so I imagine that the way I picture their friendship beginning was when they were younger, when Brett was in high school and Gonzo was in college, or somewhere like that. And the uncle part was when that age, kind of small age gap, meant something more. And he keeps that as a nickname. And Gonzo continues to try to do the big brotherly, uncle type role for his younger friends because he's older than anyone in the group. Maybe much older than, say, Sky or Franny. The favorite part of it, I don't know. I guess I love the banter they have going back and forth. Brett's just so serious and literal-minded, where Gonzo's uh, goofy and wants to let loose, and the tension between the two is just fun. Fun to write, fun to read. I just like their friendship. Like a lot of the friendships in these books. Um, of all the secondary characters, the one who stood out to me the most was Liz. Uh, Me too. She seemed to be the one character you loved to write about. How did you build the quirky bits of her personality while giving her an edgy sense of style? Is she a composite character or someone you just had a heap of fun developing? A little bit from one column and a little bit from another column. Liz is a fictional character. She's one of the most fictional characters in here. She was vaguely at first based on somebody I knew on in an online community who I got to meet once in person. Uh, but mostly she's kind of Brett's counterweight. She is the opposite to him, where he lacks confidence, she is full of confidence. Where he is kind of lost in life, she finds her way in life. These are two people who care very much about each other, and they kind of need each other. Liz needs some grounding by serious, insecure Brett, and Brett needs buoying up by bubbly, fun Lizzie, who you know is very mercurial and but steadfast in her support of people she cares about. And that's what they have in common. Brett would never sell out his friends and doesn't want to change who they are. And neither does Liz. I liked writing their relationship as being difficult in that they're different and don't always see each other's point of view. But that's kind of realistic. In a real relationship, not everybody gets along all the time. And you help each other where you can. Liz developed over time. She was, like I said, the most fictional, but she seemed to speak to me better than the others. She was colorful and vibrant and full of energy, and she was often just what a scene needed when things got too serious or slow. Lizzie would pop up with something bright and funny to say, and she would instigate in her own way to move everything forward instead of holding back. And she's kind of an opposite to Gonzo as well. Now that we're talking about them, as Gonzo doesn't want to believe. He's a very material world sort of person, where Lizzie has her head in the clouds much of the time. Let's see. When you initially wrote Sky into Sinking Down, were you already conceptualizing the tipsy fairy tales at that junction, or did the revolution come later on? I know you had written the entire Road Ghost series ahead of Seven Star Press publishing them, but I wasn't sure if you had planned the two series to hug close together and be companions. No, I mean, Sky was a character that was meant for comic relief and as a sort of surprise way for the. I don't want to give away spoilers, but she was meant to be funny. She was based on somebody I bumped into while trying to write my book, who distracted me for a while. And, that character took on a life of her own, like Lizzie's did. The Tipsy Fairy Tales are a spin-off of Road Ghosts. They're not, even though technically Blue Spirit takes place after Sinking Down, but before Me and the Devil. They were written. The Blue Spirit was written after the whole Road Ghost was over. I just picked the character I thought could be the most interesting out of the secondary characters to become a fully fledged main character. I thought I wanted to write something funny and to do with fairies, and so Sky was a natural choice. Let's see. So no, I mean, I did intend the series to dovetail with each other, but I wasn't thinking of Tipsy Fairy Tales until I was already done with the Road Ghosts. She says, once the Tipsy Fairy Tales concludes in the third installment, what do you project will be your next series? Or are you going to start to explore short stories or novellas? What can you share about the future releases you're interested in exploring next? Also, will one of the secondary characters from your past novels or shorts be expanded into our own storyline? Okay, this is another bunch of questions, Jorie. So I am slowly working on the final Tipsy Fairy Tales book, Mean Spirit. But when it's done, well, let's just consider the Road Ghost universe first. Will I revisit it? I may revisit it in short stories. I might. I don't have any plans for another novel. I did have an idea at one time of doing. The one character I would revisit out of all this would be Franny, as she really changed the most throughout the series of almost any of the characters, and she has a superpower that's kind of similar but not the same as Sky, and she'd be more suited to more paranormal ghost sort of stories rather than fairy stories. But I haven't no stories come to me on that yet. I suppose another character I would continue with is Enid from Spectral Delivery. She's already also starred in a crossover short story I did for a holiday anthology called The Gifts of the Magi. Was the anthology, and the story was Christmas special, and that involved the Transit King and Gonzo and Enid and a few other mentions. It was a fun one to write. I wouldn't call it a ghost. It was more of a Tipsy Fairy Tale story that Enid came into, even though it had Gonzo in there. I could write more with Enid. She's a good outsider for different situations. I have written short stories over the years, and I have a collection that I called Alien Beer and Other Stories, and I just put that out last year. I'll probably write some more short stories. I've thought about doing a lot more flash fiction, which is something I enjoy working on, just for the length and the impact of the stories. It's just, but I also like writing novels for the big, longer view plots and more character development. I might even do a combination of those where I'll write a novel that's just instead of chapters, it has a collection of interlinked flash fiction. I don't know, just an idea. I can't say that I'm done with the Road Ghost world, but I don't know where I'm going to go with it next. So I have other worlds that I want to explore. I have a book called Reality Check that has a sequel that's itching to be written, and I have a series of novellas called Transcontinental. I already have an idea for a third book in that series. And I would kind of like to write some more shorts. So, anyway, paranormally speaking, she says, what talent would you love to have for yourself? Telepathy, telekinesis, precognitive awareness, second sight, or another talent altogether? What makes it attractive to speculate about having? Well, I would like to have teleportation, because I've got a lot of friends that are far away that I would like to be able to go visit in the blink of an eye. That's my easy answer on that one. It's fun to speculate about having paranormal abilities like this, just because it gets us beyond our normal world. It lets us think about what would it be like if you could do more things. I mean, everybody likes to do what superpower would you have if you could pick one? So that's what I like about science fiction and fantasy, and urban fantasy in particular, is the speculation of what if I had teleportation? What would my life be different? How would my life be different? What things might happen that I wouldn't expect? That sort of thing. Jorie asks, which authors of paranormal stories do you enjoy reading during your downtime from writing? Which characters have impacted you the most? Well, I read a lot of my friends' writing because we are authors that help each other out by beta reading. I love reading stuff by Katina French for steampunk and her twisted fairy tales, and I love reading R.J. Sullivan's ghost books and space science fiction. And in fact, I've borrowed some of his characters. Restless Spirit has several of his characters, and Sky has starred as a secondary character in one of RJ's books. We have close enough writing styles and outlooks on writing that um, those are easily doable. We trust each other's writing well enough to do that. Let's see. What have you felt the most misunderstood aspect about the paranormal? What is the most misunderstood aspect? Misunderstood. When we were in the ghost trackers, people came in expecting to see a ghost anywhere we went. We would set up a ghost hunt in a cemetery or an old building where we'd gotten permission, and they just expected Scooby-Doo. They wanted a ghost to jump out and go boo. And there's ghost hunting is a lot more boring than that. You sit in places for a long period of time. You ask questions of the air. You take readings off of various instruments, and you put that stuff all together later and see what you can find. You might get a whispered voice on a recording. You might get a picture of something that's interesting if you're really lucky. You might see some anomalies in like battery drain, have a personal experience, but it's not like people. That's not like going to a horror movie. Let's see. Of all the places you've traveled, where did you personally feel is more paranormally inclined? I feel like Austin, Texas has got to be haunted. I might be wrong in this, but that place has sort of a spirit infusing it that I think would lend itself to hauntings. I might write a story set there sometime. That's a good idea. One aspect of your stories I applaud the most is the fact that you're never graphically explicit with the horror elements. How did you decide to craft your urban fantasy and the paranormal elements within them through a more psychological, suspenseful lens of perspective than a graphically intensive one? In essence, you took the more Hitchcockian route, which I love the most to discover. Well, thank you. I have to blush being compared to Alfred Hitchcock. I did read a lot of his stories when I was young. I don't like graphic stories myself that much. I watch Supernatural, and it's very graphic. And I have to kind of put my glasses down to when the really gross stuff happens. But I don't favor graphic depictions of gore or violence or bloodiness. I also didn't set out to write horror. I originally set out to write a haunted road trip. I did intend to have suspense in there. I did intend to have fantasy. Urban fantasy is what I was going for, except instead of vampires and werewolves tearing people apart, I wanted to have ghosts and demons and other less common monsters. I guess I didn't so much set out to not be graphic as just disliking that sort of thing, and the story reflects my feelings on the matter. I like to get in people's heads. I like to get to know my characters. I want you as the reader to get to know the characters. So just having things, happen to them wasn't really what I was going for. I wanted to really get into their minds and their hearts about strange things going on around them, and have suspense and mystery and some I don't know, and some fun too. I mean, I put a lot of humor in these. I admire the ability of Supernatural and Buffy and so on when they can throw some humor in as relief from horror. I've had my stuff called horror before by some horror writers I respect, and I'm not going to argue with them. I'm not going to say it's not horror. By some definitions, I'm sure it is. It's just kind of light horror compared to what a lot of they will write. I don't, I don't set, like I said, I don't set out to write horror, but if someone reads it that way and enjoys it, then that's great. How did you first become interested in the paranormal? Was it by a direct experience, an artistic interpretation, book, film, TV series, or is it merely something you stumbled into and have enjoyed pursuing ever since? Well, I have my lovely wife Amy to blame for that one. She was interested in the paranormal before me, and although I was very reluctant to be involved with paranormal things like ghost hunting, I got interested after a while. I was hooked with my first ghost hunting meeting with the Indiana Ghost Trackers, and was very avid about investigating. I was the chief skeptic in our group for a lot of years, and I was the trainer to help people discern what was explainable from what was unexplained. Just so that if you got pictures of dust, you could call it dust rather than imagining it to have faces and being paranormal. That sort of thing. It was her enthusiasm for the paranormal that got my interest, and I've developed it over the years. People are often shocked at how few horror movies I've seen because I don't really care for them most of the time. I like suspenseful ones better than I like graphic or horrific ones. Just goes along with being kind of a sensitive person. Anyway, that was the end of Jorie's list of questions. Thank you, Jorie, for all the lovely questions and for the wonderful review on your site. If you haven't read what Jorie wrote about the road ghosts, I urge you to go back and look. She has a lot of wonderful insights into the books and clearly enjoyed reading them, which makes me as an author feel like I've succeeded where I began in writing the stories. And thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. And I hope you've enjoyed my answers as much as I've enjoyed giving them. And be sure to check out my Road Ghosts online. And thanks again to 7-Star Press as well for setting up this blog tour and for introducing me to Jorie in the first place years ago. Have a good day. Bye.